Welcome to the Entertainment Engine.
Hi, I'm Peter Moore.
And I'm Bex Gregory, and welcome to the next episode of the Entertainment Engine. We hope everybody's keeping well and having a positive week.
So, just to recap, the idea behind the podcast is to provide clarity and information on the entertainment industry. It's a great passion of ours, and we are looking forward to sharing our knowledge and experience with you all.
And just to give you a flavour of the show each week, we'll be bringing you an in-depth area of the entertainment industry across music, film and TV.
This week, we're looking at part 2 of the qualities to look for in a music manager. If you missed part 1, go back and check out our first podcast. You'll learn some really interesting points and facts there, then jump back into session 2. Also, we will be bringing a special guest onto some of our shows from the world of entertainment in the next few weeks. So stay tuned.
Now the next part of the show I really love. It's the cool facts and question of the day, which I'll be bringing to you later on in today's show.
We then move on to the latest entertainment news from music, film and TV from around the world.
Now this leads me on to something really exciting because I'll be hosting the Women in Business section for the creative industries, so be sure to stay tuned for that one. And now I'll hand you over to Pete.
Okay guys, let's get started. Okay, great. Welcome to the next part of the Entertainment Engine. Following from last week's show, looking at qualities to look for in a music manager, this week we delve a bit more into the music manager role and what bands, artists, musicians should look for, whether it's a new manager or whether it's, your second manager or third manager. Just some key points for you to sort of run through and hopefully help you on your journey, really. But one thing I did want to sort of speak about was I was on Netflix last week, shifting through the shows like everybody does, and I came across the documentary for Darth Brooks, which I thought, I'll take a look at this. Looks really interesting. First of all, I thought it was going to be about a concert, which was great, but what it turned out to be was his actual whole journey across the music industry, which was really interesting. If you get a chance, I really do recommend to check it out because it goes back to the nuts and bolts of actually how he started. And I think this is quite relevant for musicians and bands today because even back in the day, as everybody says, that's quite funny, but you will hear it, back in the day when I did this, back in the day when I did that, from your grandfather, your dad or your uncle. But it is true. He, was obviously an aspiring artist, as everybody knows, and he made his way to Nashville. He got funded by his town to actually do this, and he was, going to the shiny lights of Nashville and the big bright city and thinking, I'm going to sign a big multi-million-pound deal. And within sort of 24, 48 hours, he come back with his tail between his legs saying, it wasn't what I expected, and he just didn't realise how tough it was. Goes back the second time, and there's two parts to the Garth Brooks thing. I haven't watched the second part yet, but this is just touching on the first part. And he goes back again and gets introduced to his manager, goes to play at the Bluebird Cafe, which I'm sure we've all seen watching Nashville series. Goes in and he's sitting in the audience, and there was a second act supposed to be performing, and he never turned up. So the promoter of the night said, Garth, do you fancy getting up, having a go? So he said, yeah, great, I'll get up, and yeah, sure, no problem. In the audience was one of the A&R people, executives at, I believe it was Capitol, that turned him down. From that moment, the Capitol executive turned to his manager and said, maybe I made a mistake passing on Garth. Can you come in the next couple of days and we'll do a deal? And there was a deal done. The story of this is, even back in the day and today, everything happens for a reason or a mistake. If he wasn't playing it that night, would it have ever happened? Probably not. I don't know. He walked out of Capitol offices with a deal, and pretty much everything else is history. But what it taught him was how difficult the music industry is. And I think it's even more difficult today. And this is partly why I've decided to, put out my knowledge and, some of my experience to share with you all, because it is an absolute trench warfare out there, and nobody really cares who you are. they're only going to care when you sold 1 million records, and then they don't really care because they're looking for the next thing around the corner. So it's just armouring you with the right tools and information so that you've got a chance to have a career rather than being chucked on the tip with not much to say and nothing left to do. So I just wanted to share that little piece with you because I thought it was really interesting. If you get a chance, check out the show because it is quite good. So without further ado, let's just sort of continuing on about the qualities to look for in the music manager. Now, just sort of recapping over some of the things I discussed last week. A good music manager, you need to be organised and you need to be excellent with people and be a very all-round person, very approachable, very easy to get on with. You need to be able to listen to people, and above all, the role of a manager needs to bring together people, projects that meet all the goals for the artist and the record company, just basically help the project gain commercial success. And with some of the managers that I've come across and worked with and sort of known for a long time, a music manager can come from any area of the industry. So they could have been a promoter, they could be an assistant at a record company or at an agency, they could even be engineers. And one thing is for sure, across the many times that I've gone to see bands, some of them even come as artists. They've been an artist in a band, or they've been a musician, and they decided, with a lot of their experience, they've come out and thought, well, actually, I'll have a go at being a manager. And that's not a bad thing to do because they got some experience, and they can sort of put that into their next project, working with a solo musician or a band. And I think that's really, really good. So putting time, for managers, putting time in different levels of the industry is a really good way, and I can't endorse this enough. To be any type of manager, you have to know how this industry works. So you have to look at all the areas of the music industry. So I don't care what anyone says, to be a good all-round manager, you have to know what a label does, you have to know what a publisher does, and you also have to know how to make a good cup of tea, because I did it for 2 years. I made tea for about 150 people on a daily basis, and I delivered the mail to everybody. So I got to know the in-depth of how that particular label works, and that's what stood me in good stead for today. So I'm able to share some of my experience and knowledge with you all. And also, we've all come across pressure in our life, and one of the people, or the person you need to have on your side and can deal with pressure in a really good way is your manager, because your manager is going to deal with all sorts of people. They're going to deal with a grumpy agent, they're going to deal with a pissed off promoter, they're going to deal with a label that you haven't delivered your album, your artwork's not quite right, then you've got the designers on your case, then you've got the finance, then you've got the bank you've got to deal with. Manager needs to be calm and collected while your head's spinning and all the band's jumping up and down. That manager needs to stand his ground and actually deal with everything that's around him. And again, that's a massive quality within a music manager, and I would say it's a quality in any manager really. And as again, some managers can be found at gigs, clubs, huge networking events. They're everywhere, but it's just sort of touching on a few areas that I think is really important for budding musicians to help find their feet and find the manager that they're looking for. So going on to the next area, when you are looking for a manager, he needs to be well connected. This can tie into experience. They're one and the same really, but a good music manager have so many connections in the industry, and not just the music industry. They will should I say, knowledge and key contacts in film, TV, great live network. They should have the ear of independent as well as say major labels, so at least they can actually pick up the phone and have a conversation. Agents, and time again, I'll touch on a little story. I worked with a punk band many years ago, and great band, and they were, as most bands can be, a bit sort of cocky, maybe the word, but that's what a band needs to be if they need to get on. They need to be a bit sort of brash and a bit cocky. And I remember the bassist turned around to me and said, "Oh well, we think we're going to move on, and we're going to go and get an agent, and we're going to walk into CAA and William Morris, and everything's going to be hunky dory." I said, "Great." I said, "Guys, that's really what I want to hear. Good luck with what you want to do. Just keep me informed." 2 years later, that band picked up the phone to me. It was actually the lead singer. Picked up the phone and said, "Pete, how are you doing?" I said, "Yeah, no, I'm good. How are you?" "Well, things didn't quite work out. It didn't go." I said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but what actually happened?" He said, "Well, that meeting we had at William Morris." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What happened?" It didn't get any further than the receptionist. I said, "Well, I'm not going to sit here and tell I told you so, but what I am going to say is, why would they take a meeting with you? What have you done? Why do they need you on their roster? They don't." He said, "No, I know." He said, "But the band didn't realise what it takes." I said, "They don't care. Big agents don't care. They don't care about you. They will only care about you when you sign the big multi-million-pound deal and you've got 5 million people on Spotify. That's all they care about. Plus, they're busy." And he said, no, I get it. I understand it. And it was just one of those lessons that every band should go through, really. You haven't got a God-given right just to walk into a major agent and suddenly them take you on and the world's all rosy again. It just doesn't work like that. And that's where a good manager will come in and navigate those waters for you. And even good managers I've come across, I've worked with some really great ones that they might have the ear of the big promoter, but the promoter might say he's not quite ready. "No, you're not really going to bring any value to our show," and the agent might say the same. And it's a cat and mouse game. You just got to be in their face in a good way, in a positive way, and then you'll start bashing the doors down. But a good manager can help you to do that. And you also don't want a manager that's going to rattle off a load of names to you. That's been in a networking event and suddenly they know XYZ from XYZ and they've told you who XYZ is, and you had lunch with them, and the manager had the photo with him, but he just sort of got involved in the photo because he thought it'd be good for his career or her career. You just want to be careful of that as well, because there's so many people out there that can just say that they've got this and say they can do this, and sometimes they can't. So this comes down to your due diligence again, which we touched on in the first series. So just be really careful and just really think about what you're doing and sit down with your band and just discuss it, because there's no major rush at all, really. And I think when you're looking for well connected, you also want to look at the manager as a good human being. It's the next point that we look, and it can be an overlooked factor when choosing a manager. Bands want to get on and they want to sell their music and they want to be in front of thousands of people, but your manager is the gateway to the promoter, to the label, to the publicist. Use this as a bit of white paper, and a bit of white paper is that sitting on the desk as a record executive, and that record executive or agent or promoter doesn't want that problem. And what the manager does, he takes that bit of paper off that table and he deals with that problem. That's what they don't want. They don't want you as a band phoning up moaning that you haven't got your M&Ms in your dressing room. They don't want to know that your strap on your guitar broke. They don't care. They ain't interested. That's why your manager's there, is to mitigate all of this kerfuffle and rubbish that's in between that your manager deals with. And to be fair, managers take a lot of brunt, and then the band's having a go at the manager because this hasn't quite worked out. Well, going back to my point of the punk band that couldn't get into William Morris, sadly, they get it. But sadly, they are no more, because they did realise how difficult this industry is. And that goes for thousands and thousands of bands out there. So you need to bring your A game, and you need to bring it sharp. And especially what's happening with COVID-19, it's even more important that you are fully professional, and you're going to have patience. And patience is a virtue, and you're going to have that. And if you haven't got it, then if you're out of the industry, then that's your hard luck. Tough. That's the way it is. You've got to come professionally to the table, and people will listen to you. So it comes to a good human being with a manager, and they've got to be trustworthy, they've got to be reliable. And as I said back in the first session, your gut will tell you that. It's like anything. If you've got a funny feeling, don't go with it. It's trust it. Believe me, trust it. And in this world of the music business, and the emphasis is on the business, you will understand what I'm saying to you. And this is why I'm sort of preaching, and I'm sort of just trying to get my message to you, so you don't make some of the mistakes that I've seen some bands make. And band managers will also be a cheerleader. They'll be a psychiatrist for you. There'll be a shoulder to cry on. This works in a really, really good way. And if you've got a close-knit team, that can be solid, and that can stand all the hardships. So when your manager is bringing you good news, You know, you've got that agent or you've got that publicist who's going to write that review about it. Share it. People don't share the good things. We always talk about bad things. You know, bad news travels fast and good news very rarely does. And I don't know why that is, but I think it's down to psychology in society, where that people just don't want to share good news because it's, you know, there's going to be bad news around the corner. Share that. Even if it's a you know, a blog you've put out that actually works for the band, and you know, share that success. Equally, you've got to share the bad times, because there's going to be a lot. You know, your eyes are going to be opened up as a band to what this industry is all about, and you should have the aspiration to sign to a big major, but you're probably not going to be quite ready yet. So when your manager brings out bad news, don't trample all over him or her. They're actually fighting for you as well. So they're dealing with the corporate, so they're dealing with the big label, they're dealing with the big agent, they're dealing with the independent agent, they're dealing with the small promoter to the big promoter. You haven't got the God-given right to be on that festival. You just haven't, because those festival slots and big events get taken by established acts that are going to bring an audience, that are going to sell that promoter tickets. You have to understand that mechanic. If you don't understand it, then you better go back and do your business and your research, because you ain't going to get anywhere. It's as simple as that. So just really, and talk to your manager. If there's something bothering you, just talk to him or her. And, you know, if they haven't got the answer, they can certainly find the answer because of the network that they've got. And I think that really is a key. Now, this really takes me on to what we all have to deal with in our life, really. I mean, there's no way around it. You've got to be financially responsible. And I think you need a manager that can handle finances, and this can be from your merchandising to setting up a streaming campaign to doing a deal with a label, working with your attorney. You're going to need at some point the manager that knows his way around a pound note, and it's good for you as a band to understand your way around a pound note as well, because more the gigs that you do, sorry to be the bearer of bad news, you ain't getting paid for any gigs at the moment, right? It's not going to happen. So we flip side that, and how do you get paid for some of your gigs? Well, you got your merchandise. So your merchandise is going to need a little bit of an investment, and that could be with your band, that could be with your band members, your manager. You know, you can all club together, and it's not expensive to do that. So it's a really good tip where you can get your merch done for quite a reasonable price, and you can get some really good quality product, t-shirt, flyers, posters, whatever you want to do, pens. That's a really great look. So any gigs that you do you're not getting paid for, you can sell your merch. So you either have a band member that will control that with your manager, or you just give it solely to your manager and he will deal with it. And I think over the years, it's been well documented over the years with different managers and different situations with major acts, or over the time, that, you know, money's gone missing. There's some irresponsible financial management out there. There's managers that are maybe not as good as they say they are. So it's really the band's job to actually at least get a grasp on this, but you do need a manager that understands money and understands what you're going to do with it, and working with your attorney and how this is going to work with you. Because going from you performing to no one in a venue and one man and his dog, to selling 10 t-shirts and a CD, 2-3 years down the line, that could completely change to signing a multi-million-pound deal with a label, and suddenly you're selling, you know, 1 million units. You need a manager that's going to actually do the number crunching and actually work with your attorney and accountant at that time to make sure that everything is right for you. And I'm going to again share another little story with you all. One of the really great experiences I had, I worked with a really good band in the UK, and I was in New York doing some seminars. It was sort of like the indies meet the majors, and it was with one of the governing bodies, AIM, which is the Association of Independent Music. And it was a really, you know, there was about 50 people there, half of them were managers, and I met some really great people. One of the managers I met, he had a band that were on the cusp of doing something, and he effectively remortgaged his house with his assistant. They piled in thousands of pounds into this act, and on the hoping that they were going to get signed. He came to New York. He was telling me about the story. We were sitting in the lobby, and he got a call from the label, and the label said, "Yeah, we're really happy to go with the act, but on the proviso that they actually go on tour support with one of the bigger acts that we have." And that was a really interesting dynamic, because what actually happened, that act wouldn't have got signed to that label if they weren't touring with this bigger act. And it just sort of highlighted to me that the smaller act was actually going to be on the coattails of the bigger act, doing big shows. And I'd ended up doing 2 or 3 shows at the beginning of their tour with the larger act, and it was really, really good because their fan base built up extraordinarily well, especially when you're being in a field with like 25,000 people. It doesn't take a lot of working out, but again, it was the decision made by the bigger band to actually have them on support tour. So it's just something to think about. Sometimes things come at you from a completely different angle, and sometimes they're just not planned. It can just fall on your lap and you think, oh, where did that come from? And it's never planned, but it does come down to what I've sort of been saying across these series really, is that you do need to be prepared, and you do really need to know where you're going, and you need to have a strong team around you to make it happen. And I think that is it's vital, especially more in today. And I think what's happened with COVID-19, it's even more important for you to be really prepared about what you're doing and understand why you're getting into this industry. And again, your manager as well he shouldn't get wheeled and dealed into contract and just take the first thing that comes along. It's not good business. Taking the first deal on the table isn't good business. Just walk away. Again, it's gut reaction. If your manager says, don't think this is going to actually work out for us, then don't do it. If he's got the experience that you haven't, then listen to him, because he would have the ear of the attorney. The attorney will say, I don't think this is quite a good deal to do. Maybe the band should walk away. Be another deal, because it will come down to the band's live performance. That's really why a label or manager or agent gets involved, because they want a great band that does great live performance, and they're going to sell a lot of records. And that's why I don't care what anyone says. It comes down to live performance. It always will, and always has. If you can deliver that, then everything else can open for you. Then it's just about you making sure that you got the music right, and you're actually putting out the right music that you want. And don't be a slave to the industry. Do what you want, but do it really, really well. And then the people will find you. And that's a really, really good trait to have. And a manager should also have as well. They should have he or she should be a firm business person, knowing how to make sound and profitable business decisions. Their personal traits would be great education. And I don't mean has to come back to have a degree. Some of the best managers that I know and work with, they come from the street. So they come from, hard knocks, like a lot of people do in certain industries, and they've been in the trenches on the streets for a long time. They get how the business works. They know who the good people are. They know who the bad people are. They got good business instincts. They know who to go and talk to. They know where to get you a gig. It's the funny thing, when you get to that point where an agent or manager can pick up a phone and something happens tomorrow, it's because of who they are, because of what they've done. And that's a massive, massive valuable trait that a manager has. You also want as well a manager that's not a pushover or over-eager. People can smell that, and it's not a good thing to do. So you want a manager that's on even ground, that can actually hold their ground, where the label thinks, oh, actually, he's not a pushover. He's not trying to oversell us. I think we need to keep tabs on this, and I think that's where you want your manager to be. He's the balance of everybody. So he's the balance between the label. He's the balance between the publicist. He's the balance between the band. He's just trying to keep everyone on an even keel. And sticking up for managers at the moment, it's not an easy job. It took me at least a minimum of 10 years to understand 50%, maybe 60% of how this business works. And I'm in no way a major expert, but I do have great knowledge that I can share with you all. So over 30 years, I've got a great understanding of how many areas of this industry works, and that's why I'm saying a manager needs to understand lots of areas so that they can be a good manager, and it can make or break an act. And I think that's really, really, really important. So I can't emphasize enough to bands and artists, if you've got great music, great live performance, great managers will find you. Whether it's an independent manager or whether it's a major manager from a network, they will find you. And you also want a manager that knows what they want and how they're going to get it. So when you as a band sit down with a manager, you're going to have the big idea that you're going to sign to Columbia, you're going to want to sign to Sony, XYZ. Great. If that's your plan, you need to know how to get there. And that's not let's jump into Z and away we go. And the reason is that major labels exist for a reason. They can cross you over very, very quickly, and it's what they're very, very good at, and their international network is phenomenal. But if you're not ready, it's really not gonna do the band any good. And I sort of emphasise this quite a lot, really, because where your apprenticeship comes in as a band, and what your manager will be looking for is your live performance. It's a bit like anything. If you go and be a plumber, electrician, you're gonna have to do an apprenticeship, an attorney. You know, you've got to go to school, you've got to go to college, and you've got to get a degree, and you've got to learn your craft. And that's no different to you being a musician, lead singer, drummer. You've got to learn your craft. And then you understand why the big label's going to sign you. Day one, you're just going to see, away I go, and I'm going to be touring all over the world, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. Yeah, great, but you might not last. When you come around the second time, and I think this is going back to when we started off with this podcast with Darth Brooks, I think he understood the second time what the industry was all about and how difficult it was. And I think people have to go through this. They have to. I've been through it many, many times. You have to understand what this business is all about, otherwise you will never survive. And even more so now, with the rate of how this industry is changing, you're going to have to come up with your game. So unfortunately, it's not just about great music, it is understanding how this industry works, and they should go hand in hand. And again, it sort of leads on to your negotiation skills of a manager. You know, who they can pull in, what relationships do they have they got your best interest at heart, or do they just want to sell you on? Do they want to sell you onto a label because it benefits them, and then the label, you know, basically you crash and burn under that label? You've got to look at this, you know, for a period of time. If the manager comes to you and that's what he or she wants to do because they can see it, okay, at least you know up front where you're at and what you're going to be doing, and that might be a financially good thing for you and the management. But generally, I would still say you want a manager that's going to be with you through thick and thin. It's like a marriage. I've said before, that's what you're going to have to do. But you've also got to give your manager a bit of a break, because they are generally, I would say, all the managers that I've known and worked with, some major managers, indie managers, they generally love what they do, and they do it because they enjoy it and they want to see the band get on. And I think that's, you know, really, really good. Another point to consider as well is, how is that manager, he or she, going to get on with your family? You know, what's your mum and dad going to think of them? Because at some point, you are going to have that conversation with your mum, with your dad, with your sister, with your brother, with the shop owner, whoever. They're going to say, oh, so how are you getting on? Who's your new manager? And they will ask you questions that you might not have even thought of. Oh, what's their background? Where have they come from? What have they done? You're going to get all those questions. And if you can tick box them questions before you have that conversation with your family or your close friends, then they're going to look at you a bit, oh, okay, you know, oh, that sounds good. You can point them on the direction of the web, what they've done, or look at what companies they've worked with, what acts they've worked with. It doesn't have to be a major international act. They can have a roster of 10 unsigned acts. Doesn't matter. What matters is that they say that what they're going to do and what they've done, and then if you're happy with that, you move on and you do the best you possibly can. And again, it comes down to great music, and it should always come down to live performance, and your manager really is the extension of that. And I think that, you know, they're really important key traits that we've looked at. And just to sort of, you know, take this with you, I just want to recap on some of the points we've looked at to look for the qualities of the music manager. First one was experience. That comes down to anything, and I don't mean to say you need to have a manager that's got 20 years experience. You need to have someone that's got several years, has got the ear of people across agent, publicists, streaming companies, merchandise companies. So at least you know, they can do things you can't. Trustworthiness, which we've touched on quite a lot, is absolute key. That will be in your gut reaction whether or not you feel this person is going to be really good for you or not. Enthusiasm. You've got enthusiasm, like buckets of it. You want to go out and you want to perform with U2, Coldplay, Rage Against the Machine, in front of 50,000 people. Great. Your manager should have that enthusiasm. He or she should be saying, we're going to support those acts. Even if you don't get there, doesn't matter. If you're reaching for the stars and you get to the moon, it's not bad, is it? And your journey over 4, 5 years, 10 years, the knowledge will be greater and you'll understand what you're trying to achieve. Again, managers should be well connected. They should be able to pick up a phone and do things that you can't. So going back to the band that thought they could walk into William Morris and CAA, you can't do that. They're not going to take a meeting with you. They don't care. Your manager will be the gateway to that, being well connected. Good human being, it's a natural thing. It comes to gut reaction again. It's got to be a good human being. You've got to like them. They've got to like you. It's a marriage. You could be with your manager for 6 months or 50 years. It's completely up to you. And I think that comes down to an honest working relationship. You're going to go through 1,000 bad times, 1,000,000 bad times, and you're going to go through several good times. Do it together, because it's a journey and it's a tough one. Financially responsible. Your manager is going to make some difficult decisions based on the band, and sometimes based on what's best for the band and what's best for you and what's not best for you. And you've got to understand that sometimes managers make those decisions. I've had to make them where, I've done showcases for bands and they think that there's going to be 10,000 people turning up and there's only going to be 500. They have to understand that money that comes in the door for 1,000 people has to pay the venue, has to pay the engineer, has to pay their merch. They're not left with a lot of money, but that's the way it is. And unfortunately, that is the way it is. And a firm business person, you want a manager that's got all of those traits, but will stand their ground and actually be quite firm on what they say. And that's with you as a band, and that's with an attorney or a label or a publicist. If you know they're going to war for you, and I mean going to war in a good way, and they're telling you to do something, over time you're going to go, oh, I get this. I understand why he or she's telling me this now. It's because most of the time they're not just telling you this for the sake of it. They're telling you it for a reason. And just the last point of this session, I wanted to sort of cover with the band. If within your network, and this can work in a great way for you, if you can get introduced to a manager, it's going to be a lot easier than you cold calling, because you cold calling, we've all been there. I've been there. It takes them ages to get back to you. Sometimes they never will. If you can just get that introduction, maybe a publicist you work with or your attorney that you've got, they can introduce you to some good managers. You're 50% there, especially if your attorney's introducing you to a group of managers, or a manager's going to come down to see you play. That's a really great look. And this point goes for you as a band, as an artist, as well as a manager. Don't be over eager. Sell yourself to the point, but don't oversell yourself. There's a fine line to it. And be ready for that manager when he or she comes along. So a few things just to bear in mind when you are looking for the manager or you've got that meeting. Provide music samples. Don't provide your whole catalogue. They haven't got time to listen to 5,000 songs. Pick out your best 3 to 5 songs, put them into an EP. Ask that manager if they can take it in a link or if they want it attached to email. 9 times out of 10, they're just going to want it into a link, which is the easiest way. Treat the sample that you send to that manager, and bearing in mind you've been introduced to this manager or managers by introduction from an attorney or by a good friend, so it's a warm introduction. You're not going completely in cold. So when you send the demo, do it like you'd send it to a label. So you're actually providing that 3 to 5 tracks. Provide a biography on the band. Doesn't need to be a 50-page essay. 2 pages, that's it. What the band's all about, each individual band member, no more than 2 paragraphs, full name, few pictures. Fantastic. If you've got press clippings, even if it's down the local pub with one man and his dog, and the local rags done a picture on you and a bit of, put that in. That's really great. If you've got any more than that, pick out the best ones that you've actually done. And I think it's a really good time, and I've said this before, but I think now with what's happened with COVID-19, I think it's even more important for bands to get online and actually really maximise what they can do. So your social media activity, whether you're new or whether you're established, is going to be more and more important than ever. And I think you've got the opportunity to now sign up to all the different streaming platforms. You can put up 1 track, you can put up 3 tracks, you can put up 5 tracks. So that's a really good position for you to be in as a band. One person in the band can take care of your social media activity, or you can share it. It's entirely up to you, whatever you want to do. Also include there for up and coming gigs. So you might have 4 or 5 gigs coming up, and then offer the manager all of those gigs. Which one would they like to come to? Obviously put them on the door. Take care of them when they come along, and just do a nice little package. And trust me, managers appreciate that. They will appreciate that just that small a bit of content, the effort that you put in. Even if you've only got 50 people on your social media, you're starting to do something. And again, it will be the music that will hook them. And coming back to the warm introduction, if it's come from an attorney, they're already warm because they're already going to be excited to hear your music because it's coming from an industry professional that's already endorsed you. And I think that's a lot easier for you to do. So all I wish now is I wish you all great success in what you do. Hopefully there's some points in that you can take on and move on in your journey. And I'm looking forward to seeing some of your music and some of the bands performing live. And yeah, good luck to you all. Take care and thanks very much.
Facts of the day.
And now I'm just going to pass over to Bex as she's got another great fun fact of the day. And I also believe she's got another question of the day for our listeners. Bex, how are you doing?
Oh, hiya, Pete. Yeah, I'm doing really good, thanks. Yeah, so we've got some really cool, fun facts again for this week. So we've got one that's a really great movie fact actually for you. And I've also thrown in a little random one that's not even entertainment at all, but I just wanted to share it just to add a little bit of fun for the show. So this first one is actually about one of my favourite desserts, the apple pie. Now, I didn't know this, but the apple pie actually isn't American at all, which I was really surprised about. In fact, considering that neither apple pies or apples originally came from America, apples in fact came from Asia. And just to add, the first recipe that was recorded for the apple pie was actually in England. So there's just a little bit of knowledge to take away with you today. So now I've got a really good movie fact for you. This next one is about the Oscars, where they actually used to give out awards to child performers. But they discontinued the Juvenile Academy Award in 1960 after some of the famous names like Judy Garland and Shirley Temple who won the award. And this leads me on to Anna Paquin, who at 11 years old won the Academy Award for Best Actress in a supporting role for her performance in the film The Piano in 1993. And she currently holds the record for the youngest person to ever win an Oscar.
Well, that's really great. Thanks for that, Bex. And also, have you got your question for the listeners for today?
Yes, so the question for this week is, what year was the first series of X Factor? So if anyone thinks they know the answer, we would love to hear from you. So please drop us a message, which you can do so on www.anchor.fm/entertainment engine, as you could be one of the lucky people to get a shout out on our show. Also, the answer to last week's question of the day, which was, in which London borough was David Bowie born? And the answer is Brixton. But at the age of 6, he moved with his family to Bromley. Well, that's all from me today, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and I'm looking forward to bringing back some more fun facts for you again next week. Take care.
Entertainment news.
Okay, and now we have the film news. Now this piece is really, really exciting. I don't know about everybody out there, but one of my all-time favourite films, or trilogies, is Back to the Future. So if you'll remember, Back to the Future star Michael J. Fox, when he shot the iconic Johnny B. Good scene, what a great moment that was. Absolutely fantastic. If you like me, you'll love the 80s. Back to the Future, with its iconic scene, is the most great laughter moment. And there's many in the film, to be fair, but when he comes in with his classic guitar moment, absolutely fantastic. Michael J. Fox, who plays Marty McFly, accidentally inventing rock and roll by covering Chuck Berry's legendary song Johnny Be Good. Apparently the scene took 4 weeks to work on. At the same time, Fox was working with Madonna's choreographer. But what Fox liked to do was incorporate all the characteristics and mannerisms of the quirks of his favourite guitarists. So, a Pete Townsend windmill, and a Jimi Hendrix behind the back, and a Chuck Berry duck wall. What can I say? Just an iconic movie, and I wish we could have another, Back to the Future. What do you all think? Bring Back to the Future back? And now we move on to some more movie news. As this is all on people's minds in the last several weeks. When John Boyega joined the Black Lives Matter protest in London and gave his full-throated speech, the film industry actually came out to support him, including Jordan Peele, Mark Hamill, after his huge Black Lives Matter speech. He wasn't sure if he was going to have a career after the speech, but several notable members, including who I've mentioned, quickly came out to support him on social media, voicing their desire to actually work with John. Other names include Matthew A. Cherry and Olivia Wilde. Actually, I did read on the official Star Wars social media account from Lucasfilms, which reads, Lucasfilms stands with John Boyega. Black lives have always been important. Black lives have always meant something. The evil that is racism must stop. We will commit to being part of this change that is long overdue in the world. John Boyega, you're our hero. I think that's a real positive statement, and all I would add to that really is just to say that all lives matter. Everybody's important, and we should just give that little bit of kindness and humanity to everybody. And just to finish off, something really that John Boyega fans are going to like, he will be next seen as the lead in Chase Palmer's up-and-coming Naked Singularity, playing a successful public defender in the wake of losing his first case. I believe there's other movies, roles that John's going to be playing, so we look forward to seeing what's coming out in the future. Now, what is happening in the indie music sector? Let's take a look. Each week, I will pick a couple of indie acts who are making a splash in today's indie music scene. The first artist on the Music Engine Spotlight today is Callan Green, country pop from the US. The Nashville country pop newcomer Callan Green, who got into writing music when he was in the 9th grade after seeing Keith Urban perform live. From that show, he was so inspired, he went into the studio with Jesse Fraser and produced a 5-track EP. And he's currently present on 3 Spotify official country playlists, picking up around 900,000 playlist followers to his name. Nice one, Callan. So now we're going to move on to the next Engine Spotlight artist for this week. Zara Kays, pop from the US. Singer-songwriter Zara Kays captivates listeners through her honesty, heartbreaking stories inspired by her childhood and growing up in the Midwest. Having made appearances on Spotify's Modern Soft Pop playlist, she has since seen a 184% increase in followers and has steadily built to 315,000 monthly listeners on Spotify. It's really good to see unsigned acts bringing their sound and creativity to the world. Check them out if you get a chance. You're going to be really surprised. More from Music News next week when we pick 2 other indie acts to feature on the Music Engine Spotlight. It's going to be great. Well, that's all for today's episode of the Entertainment Engine, and thanks for listening. Join us again next week when we talk more about the entertainment industry and delve deep into what a music agent does on a day-to-day basis. Plus, I will have all the latest news and updates from the music and film sectors with the majors and the indies. It would be great to have your feedback on the show. You can always drop us a message anytime. That would be really great. So, make sure you subscribe to the podcast at www.anchor.fm/entertainment engine so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening, have a great week, and above all, stay safe.
The Entertainment Engine.